Hello everyone! It is Alyssa Reynolds here for what is a usual Saturday live for what I'm usually doing over in my private group, the Amethyst Cave. But for a number of reasons, I am here with absolutely everybody here today, and I just realized it's a leap day today. So happy leap day to everybody. And just realizing that it's a leap day further cements, well, some of the many reasons why today's a little bit different from my usual Saturday lives. Hey Ursula, wonderful to have you join. So, since I am over here on my business page, AR Reynolds, rather than over in the group, I am just going to take a moment while I'm waiting for people to pop on in over here to let people know that I'm over on my business page. So that's done and shared. And just to go through a little bit of what today is going to be about, since it's very different from usual, I wanted to start with just acknowledging that it's actually an anniversary for me for it being a whole year since I came out into the spiritual community openly, and I wasn't being this quiet, closeted person anymore. So I've been doing this now for a whole year, which is absolutely amazing, and is another thing a little bit like the leap day that I'm like, wow, I can't believe this. This is like mind-blowing. Aw, thanks Ursula. I am doing absolutely wonderfully, actually. Really wonderfully. There's lots of exciting things that have been boiling up as just the days have been going, which is wonderful, because having been doing this for a year, in about November, December time, just last year, I was starting to feel a little bit of a drag, and I was having this dip down. And then I started seeing everywhere all these signs pointing me toward things that I had used to be really passionate about, things that I had considered my bliss, and they were suddenly popping up everywhere. And that's really what's led me to today being really excited and super happy and feeling more vibrant than usual. Although I will always credit the fact that I tend to have lots of fairies hanging around me all the time, which certainly helps. But this is me jumping ahead a little bit with what I wanted to talk about today. And so I'm going to just pull back a little bit before I start diving ahead into the middle of all my stories for today and go back to the beginning. But yeah, absolutely kind of how I'm feeling today has to do a lot with today's topic, which is following bliss, which is, well, like happiness, one of those big, broad words and phrases where it's like as ambiguous as, whoa, it's a leap day today, and I don't know actually what to feel about it. It's this strange liminal space. So, kind of going back to the start of what I wanted to talk about today, you'll notice I may be looking down a little bit. And that's because for the first time, I have in front of me a bunch of notes, because when I checked in with Spirit earlier this week, as I always do, to find out who wants to step forward, who has anything they want to share, usually I'll get a sense of an energy dropping in, I'll hear someone speaking, or it'll be a group of them coming in, And this time, when I asked who has guidance, who has a message to me on this coming Saturday, I got silence. It was just dead still silence, just energetic stillness. It's like, okay, what does this mean? What's going on? And Randolph, of course, my wonderful male guardian angel, was like, just gave me this look. You know what's going on. And I was like, yeah, I got a sense of it. And the sense that I was getting was something that Spirit's been hinting at for a while, was that they're wanting me to speak from myself and my own experiences rather than just always channeling Spirit. So Randolph gives me this look. And then he says, on Saturday, I want you to speak about your experiences with following your bliss, and the journey that you've had and where you are going. Because following bliss is very much a human experience. And just wanting me to do it as part of practice of having to speak from myself and just being cool and calm with it. Which, despite the fact that I'm a teacher, it's not been a natural thing for me to put myself out in front of people and come up with something coherent. So this is more practice toward that. So, speaking of that too, it will be today mostly from my own experience, sharing stories, though I do have some questions. And okay, Randolph says that if needed, he will step forward and offer his guidance on things as needed, but it's mostly for me. Oh my gosh, Ursula, yeah. Yep, fairies always put me into fits of laughter too, which is probably why every time I do come live with you guys that I am giggling or feeling very excited, because they're just permanently around. Or I'll be the strange next door neighbor who just starts breaking into giggles and laughter just because of their energy. So, following bliss, like I said, it's this big, complex topic that when Randolph said, I want you to speak from your experience, then I asked him, okay, but how would you define bliss? Because it's such a big word. It is huge. And then immediately, what he put into my mind was this whole series of experiences that I've had around passions that I've had in my life, specifically centered around the fact that I have always loved stories. I've always loved telling stories and creating stories and reading stories, being part of stories. Stories are like my lifeblood, pretty much. They're the thing that drives me forward. And then Randolph was like, that's it. That's your bliss. It is that thing that drives you forward. It is your purpose. And I'm like, well, if stories are my purpose, how come I haven't actually managed to publish anything yet? And he laughed and he said, you have many things to still learn. You are on that path though. Which is a bit of a side thing. So, following your bliss is about what drives you forward. And it's something that can be very clear and obvious. It can be something that is very job-like almost. It's a thing that you fill your time with, like reading or writing stories or speaking stories. But it's also something that is your motivation. It's that, again, it's that drive, which then, through the things Randolph reminded me of, I realized, oh, yeah, another thing that I started realizing just over the last 5, maybe 6 years or so, that I really love to help people. Helping people is also part of my bliss. Everything that I've ever done, even from a very young age, has always been with that lens, with that purpose of helping someone somehow. And that is a bliss that's a lot less job-like, a lot less direct. It's kind of this, it's a theme that's just running through underneath all the other things that I'm doing. It's a thing that ran through the real reason why I stuck with teaching, even though my initial reason for going and getting an education degree had been 1 part practical and then 2 parts because I knew it was an all-purpose job that would allow me to go off and travel the world and work at the same time. And accidentally through it, I realized, no, there was that deeper reason of I really, really like being the helper. So the storytelling and the helping, I came to realize that's my bliss. And then further, what I've realized through this year, through the help of all of you, so really thanks to all of you, has been that my bliss is creating a community, being the spoke of from which a community flows out, of being part of the many supports in a community. And so that was kind of the whole flash of just images and experiences and reminders that Randolph helped remind me of when I was first thinking about, okay, so Spirit wants me to talk about following bliss just from myself. That's my bliss. That's my purpose. And we all talk about following our purpose, about finding our purpose, about rediscovering our purpose, about making sure that we don't fall off the wagon and lose our purpose. And on that note, another thing that I've realized through my experiences just in my life, and then especially in this last year, is that no matter what we're doing, because our bliss is the thing that drives us forward, it's the thing that keeps us waking up every single morning, it's the thing that tells us, okay, I'm not just going to stay curled up in bed and not get out of bed. That even when it feels like you're not following your bliss, it's a detour that will lead you back to it. And it's often a rest period where you do need to go off the path a little bit, leave what you think is your bliss to come back to it and really rediscover what it is. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Ursula. Yep. I can really, really, really relate to that actually so much. And that leads really well into what I wanted to go into more detail next, which is just what my journey with following my bliss has looked like, and where, yeah, there were absolutely, I've had a couple times where I've been in a vacuum where, yeah, it feels like you're just shouting into a void, or you're trying to do something but it's not going anywhere, or you just don't even want to do anything, and you feel like you have all these possibilities but you don't really, yeah, have that desire to even try one or try a couple. So, as I was saying kind of at the start of all of this, I've always been obsessed with stories. Stories were everything. I had this book called Mouse's Magic Paints that I had memorized back to front, and I could retell word for word without looking at it from the age of 6. And my childhood imagination and storytelling took it up a notch because I was really connected with the fairies, and then I also had this understanding that objects all had energy in them, and all these objects around me had personalities, and that led to me naming my piano. I still name my pianos. Naming desks, naming pencils, naming all of my stuffies, of course, and coming up with stories about random objects. And just finding and following the energies of all these different things and these people, and being the kid who enjoyed being in the back where I could watch people and just pick up what they were like, tuning into their energy, how they were feeling, where they were going, what their thoughts were. And by the time I was 10, I put that all into this obsession with Madagascar, which I think had largely started because I was really into lemurs at the time. And I turned Madagascar into a completely different, made-up island country and its own like alternate universe that was the beginnings to a lot of what I write today. And that was the start of me formally writing things down and drawing out stories and telling them out loud to like groups of fairies or a collection of stuffies or whatever. Which I'm sure many of you can relate to, because all kids to some degree have that element of just imagination and storytelling that happens. But for me, it's stuck around. But one thing that I realized as I got older, and as I went through high school, and as I went into university, and as like all of us have experienced, we start being more aware of the perspectives of people outside of ourselves. So instead of just tuning into the energies of ourselves and everything around us, we start thinking more from that ego. And that's where then my love of stories started taking me a little bit off course, because I started becoming the kid who would get stacks of books from the library, and one summer when I was 15, I read 50 books in 2 months. And that continued through university, where, well, I was doing degrees that required a lot of reading. And I found myself getting easily lost in reading other people's work and reading other people's stories, and not doing as much with my own stories, and just putting it aside and saying, okay, it'll come, it'll come. I'll do it one day. It'll happen one day. Or putting arbitrary deadlines. Like I said once, I think when I was about 15, when I'm 30, I am going to have a book published. And considering that deadline is going to come up next month, that's been something I've had to really just acknowledge came from a place from ego. And you don't need to put any arbitrary deadlines down of, oh, I'm going to do this thing by the time I'm this age. You'll do the thing. And just leave it at that. And kind of continuing with this experience with the bliss, well, yeah, I lost myself in just consuming other people's bliss instead of going and seeking my own, or trying to be something for somebody else, which is where my helping, my love of helping people really came in, where I wanted to please everybody. I wanted to be something for everybody. And there too, I started really easily losing myself in being somebody for someone else, to the detriment of my own identity and my own desires, and even really recognizing what my bliss was. So again, I'm sure that's something that many of you can relate with, because especially many of us in the spiritual community, we're all helpers, and always are having to remind ourselves we've got to look to ourselves first, rather than just giving and giving and giving, because that is absolutely what led me multiple times to these points where I lost my sense of identity and I lost my will to write, to tell stories, to even pursue it. In this past year, actually, was one of the biggest experiences in not just accidentally losing my passion for storytelling, but because I told myself this time last year, okay, Alyssa, you're going to step forward. You are going to be open about things that you've always kept kind of in the closet, and you're going to help people with the gifts that you have, that you've just kept hidden. You're going to now bring these into light and acknowledge this aspect of your identity, which is my ability to channel and my work as a medium. And in doing that, all this past year, I decided, okay, that means I need to put aside my writing. And I was also around other people as well who encouraged me, you need to really focus on building up your presence, on really openly practicing your abilities with others, and you can't get distracted by writing. You can't get distracted with your love of stories. You need to put that aside. And so I've gone through an entire year without writing anything, which isn't too crazy because I've had periods of 6 months or 8 months before where I've not written much, or I've not been able to write much due to wrist injuries, or just mentally not being in the best space. But yeah, this past year, I completely turned around and said, no, I'm gonna just ignore writing, and I'm not going to place value on it anymore. And in that, I did lose an aspect of myself. I lost that little thread that had been pulling me along with this love, because that's really what bliss is at its heart. It's a love of something. But just in November and December, I was starting to feel nudges from spirit again, getting nudges from spirit that were getting me to start thinking about writing again. And then a nudge to go and volunteer at this big creative exhibition happening just over in Vancouver just a couple weeks ago now. That is just this huge celebration of artists and creators of all sorts. There's your regular multimedia artists, there's voice actors, there's dancers, there's singers, there's all sorts of different creators at this event. And I went and volunteered at it to just be a part of that particular community, so that I wasn't just hiding in the back corner observing everything, but I had to make myself actively speak with people and work with people. And through that, I ended up, for the first time in my life, meeting someone who told me, follow your bliss. And I've actually never ever had anyone verbally tell me, follow your bliss. So that was one thing that also really fed into this whole chat today. And this individual who told me, follow your bliss, is an absolutely amazing, primarily watercolor artist. His name's Kit Ramusin, and he does art from different scenes, different characters from Middle Earth. Primarily, he does scenes that come from the time periods before the events of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, which is really, really amazing to me because those earlier periods are some of my favorite of J.R.R. Tolkien's stories, and it's absolutely gorgeous artwork. And so anyway, got talking to him for quite a while one day after I'd finished a shift, and the biggest thing that stuck out with our whole conversation was the fact that he said the best thing that you can do in your life is to follow your bliss. Don't focus on the practicalities all the time. Don't focus on, well, I have to keep a roof over my head. I need to have a certain amount of money coming in. I need to have food in my fridge. Don't always focus on that. Make sure that you are focusing upon your bliss, that you're keeping some part of your bliss in everything that you do every single day. So that really stuck for me because, again, over the past year, I just shoved writing aside and said, no, I can't follow it right now because it's not what I should be doing. And I had this weird divergence between, well, my identity as a medium and then my identity as a writer. He reminded me, it's all one identity. That all of the things that we love, all the things that we do are part of us. And then the second thing that I ran across quite recently as well was this audiobook that I'd been inspired to pick up from a podcast that I listened to that goes into all sorts of fascinating analysis of Star Wars mythology, oddly enough. And the book is called Theater of War by Brian Dories. And it was an amazing book and reminder of the value of struggle, the value of challenges, the value ultimately of tragedies, which are really big, heavy words that we don't always talk about in the spiritual community. And the book was the author's, or is the author's, memoir of sorts about this organization that he created to help military veterans in first in the United States, and then he's since, in years after starting it, spread out to making it international, to helping any veterans. And it's centered around events that he creates where sections from Greek tragedies are read by actors that he hires to come to perform sections of particular tragedies. And then once those sections have been performed, then the space is opened for the people in the audience to then speak about their own experiences that relate to those Greek tragedies. And it's really, really a beautiful thing that he's started, because Greek tragedies were originally created by veterans of many of the wars that the ancient Greeks went through. Particularly, there were about 80 years that the Athenians had of just constant war, and it was this amazing community practice of just releasing and letting go of all of those experiences that they'd gone through, because these plays were written by military veterans, and then the audience were all these soldiers, and it was a time for them to acknowledge, we've gone through all of this stuff, and that's okay, and we're going to just let it out now and leave ourselves free and open to be able to experience the bright things, the happy things, the light things that life has to offer. Because these theatrical festivals started out with tragedies that were performed, and then it moved on to comedies that were performed. But anyway, I'm not going to go down that track, because I'm not talking about my passions with ancient Greece and all of that stuff today. But anyway, this book was basically bringing those ancient practices back into the modern day, and was a great reminder for me, kind of going back to the idea of following bliss, of the fact that following your bliss is not always this easy process. It's not a simple path of just chasing after the thing that you absolutely love. And sometimes you get a little bit lost. Sometimes your bliss might even change. But the important thing is just acknowledging wherever you're at, whether it is being so stuck where you're like, I'm in this space of gray and I can't see my way forward. Just acknowledging it and letting yourself feel that. But then at the same time, you don't let yourself drown in it. You just keep reminding yourself every day you're going to be moving out of it, pretty much. And this is where, as I'm talking about things, that I have questions that I really wanted to pose to Randolph. Because they're questions that, although I was told, okay, talk from your own experience, I'm like, well, I don't really have the answers to these, because these are really, really big. This is a big topic. And I'm in the middle of exploring it just as much as anyone else is. but really just from my own experience and perspective, what I've kind of come to see just from those most recent inspirations, and then my experience thus far, kind of in the abridged form that I've talked about, is following your bliss is about not denying parts of yourself. Whether you might define a part of yourself as being positive or negative, that's not really in it. There is no positive or negative. And there's a wonderful quote from Rumi that I've also been seeing constantly since probably about December, where he says, "Out beyond right, out beyond wrong, there is a place, I'll meet you there." And this quote that's been following me around everywhere, I feel really, really sums up the whole journey of following our bliss, because there's never any right or wrong to where we're at or what we're doing, and we're all moving toward a particular place. The thing is, we just aren't meant to know what that place exactly is, whether that place is like right around the corner in terms of time, like next week, or if it's going to come in like a couple years, or if it's something that's going to come multiple lifetimes from now. But the thing that I get from that quote is just this idea of love and idea of hope, that really wherever we're at, that's what we need to hang on to and hold on to. Alright. So just pausing to check through any of the comments. Oh, Ursula, you told stories to your daughter. Oh my gosh. That's honestly, like, if a parent is able to tell stories to their children, is one of the most amazing things that a parent could do. At least that's my own personal opinion. My own personal opinion. And also largely biased from the fact that I was fortunate enough to have parents who were able to take the time and had the energy to be able to do that. Wow, Michael, oh my gosh. Whew. That is a lot of books in 1 year, but again, speaking from myself as someone who gets really easily lost in just reading and reading and reading and reading, I can totally relate. And kudos for keeping it on particular topics, because I've definitely had times when I've just gotten lost reading like 50 different books of the fantasy genre that were not particularly deep fantasy books, but they were more, let's run off and go have an adventure in a different world and not think about this world. So yours being very, very specific and educational, oh my gosh, that's awesome. And I hope they helped a little bit too. Aw, thanks Ursula. Yeah, me too. I'm really, really, really glad that I am writing again. Actually, I'm ecstatic that I'm writing again, because yeah, it is a part of me. And as much as it seems sometimes at like a bit of a tug of war from the mediumship that I do, it's still a part of it. Kind of, again, actually, the other thing I wanted to mention, going back to that Theater of War book, that whole organization, and then the fact that there's that focus on, well, there is value in acknowledging difficult things. That was one thing too that had stopped me from writing for a while, was I had this sense of, well, I can't focus on writing a story about a character who's going through all sorts of challenges because that might be low vibrational. And I've since realized, no, it's not at all. Characters going through challenges and having struggles is acknowledging what we're all going through. Though I will say that I'm absolutely the sort of writer that whatever I put my characters through, I'm going to have a happy ending. Always going to have a happy ending. Aww. Sad you had to leave, Ursula, but thank you for joining for a little bit, and sending you so much love, Ursula. Oh, it's one of your big faves, Kersey. Oh my god. It's probably my #1 favorite quote now. I've gone and I've written it really big calligraphy, and I've stuck it up on my wall. Oh, hello Maggie. Wonderful for you to join. So, like I said, I've got a couple questions that I wanted to see if Randolph will actually answer some of these. Even though today is meant to be me speaking from my own experience. So, one of them I've actually already answered from my own experience. Yay! Which was, how do you identify your own bliss? So yeah, like I was saying right at the very beginning, I came to realize identifying your bliss is identifying what drives you, what wakes you up in the morning, and looking at it from multiple different levels. So the thing that's driving you to wake up every morning might be something that's very 3D, very physical, something that you can grasp very obviously. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Randolph. You pointed me over to, I've got this list of character motivations that are very general things. And one of the first things is just being driven by one of those universal human needs, which is survival, safety, security, love, belonging, those kinds of things. And yeah, and then going to the next level of the thing that's driving you. Is it something that's more mental, more psychological? Is it a desire to make a change, to make a difference, to leave a mark? And then to help people, to support people, is it something like that? Or even deeper, is it a bliss that's driving you because you are seeking to understand yourself and go to that really, really deep, very metaphysical level? So first up is, yeah, going through those different ladders really to identify what your bliss is, what's driving it. Yay. Okay, and then my other question I had was, can your bliss change? Okay. Yeah, Randolph's giving me a thumbs up on that. Ooh, cool. Ha. And he says, don't forget that bliss can also be defined in many different forms. So it can come as something that's just a day-to-day simple love, like drinking your favorite tea and having 5 minutes just to yourself where you're not having to deal with your family that you're living with, or dealing with maybe whatever's on your to-do list, but you've got those 5 minutes with your favorite cup of tea. That's one. All the way up to that deeper current that drives you every single day, and then all the different levels that that current has. Yeah, Kirsty. Not thinking about what's giving the most money or status when you're choosing what to study at university. Yeah, just going for the thing that you're passionate about is so true. Especially nowadays, considering everybody needs at least one university degree, if not two. You may as well make, if you're going to take the step to go to university, making one of them be what you're the most passionate about. And in fact, one thing that my parents recently told me when I was talking to them all about just my own kind of fluctuating struggles with figuring out, okay, what am I doing with my life and where is my identity? They told me that they'd never actually wanted me to go to university with the intentions of coming out with a very practical job. That's what they wanted, like any parent would. But they ultimately wanted me to go to university and saw university as something that was there to open up my world, to give me more perspectives, to show me how to see more perspectives, to connect with more people, and essentially, well, just become more aware of the wider universe. Which was a little bit mind-blowing to me, because that's something that doesn't get talked about very often when it comes to university, especially coming from the fact that I've taught in the public school sector, which is still very much pushing kids toward that, pushing kids to think about what's the practical job that you're going to do, which absolutely has its place and has a need, because we're still in this 3D reality where there are practical things that we have to deal with day to day, but that other side is something that is just as important to talk about. Randolph, yeah, he is very sociable and talks a lot if I let him, which he will. Sometimes I'll have him just talking behind me and I'll be like, yeah, I know you're talking at me right now, but I'm really trying to focus on this other thing. I'll tune in a moment. Okay, so then the third question I had was, can you choose your bliss? And this question's just coming from the fact that I often who ask about, what's my purpose? Where am I supposed to be going? What am I supposed to be doing? And 90% of the time, if not, okay, not 90% of the time, I would say probably more like 100% of the time, yeah. Thanks, Randall. My math is off. 100% of the time, with those questions, it's then always turned back on the person, and Spirit's always asking, listen, or saying, what do you feel? Follow your feeling. And follow your heart. So not going with what the ego is saying, what other people around you are saying, what society is saying, but just going with you and yeah, so you can absolutely choose your bliss, for sure, because we're also in a free will zone, which means you could end up choosing a bliss that is driven by ego, and that's totally your choice and totally okay. And just as much as you can also check yourself and be like, wait a moment, I've been following this thing and it's been coming from my ego, and I want to redirect myself and follow what's in my heart, which we've all absolutely done. I know myself, I've absolutely, yeah, again, going down the teaching route, that was slightly ego practical based. And then I realized, okay, no, I do actually have a deeper bliss and heart reason behind it. But there's another way that I want to teach that would be more true to my heart. So we can absolutely choose our bliss and redirect ourselves and swerve off and swerve on. And like I was saying at the beginning, whatever swerve we're on is as it's meant to be. So we're never in the wrong, which again goes back to my favorite Rumi quote, that out beyond the right and out beyond the wrong, there's a place. I'll meet you there. Meaning you're never in the wrong, you're never in the right. There's just this lovely in-between space that we're always in that is balanced, and we're always exactly where we're supposed to be. I know that sounds a little bit cheesy. But yeah, it's so true. Yeah. Ooh. Okay, and then the last question that I had was, what if you can't follow your bliss? So this question is coming from, again, what I've often heard from people about, well, the fact that we do all have practical things that we have to deal with that are as simple as just trying to pay our rent, keeping food on the table, looking after children, looking after grandparents or parents, or the fact that maybe we physically aren't able to follow our bliss as we might have originally seen it. So for example, if your bliss was something very tangible and physical, like being a figure skater, there's going to come a point in your life where how you figure skated when you were 20 is going to be very different from how you're going to be able to do it when you're 60. So Randolph is saying for this that you never can't follow your bliss. You never can. Really? No, I don't. Double negative. And the grammatical side of me is just like, really? So there's never a time when you're not your bliss. He says, because your bliss is not just something that you can touch, that you can see, that you can smell, that you can interact with. Your bliss is tied up with your sense of love, be it your self-love or the love that you project outward. And in that, if you use your sense of love as your guidepost, you will always be following bliss. And if you feel that you are lost, that you can't bliss, know that you will bring it into a physical form that you will be able to touch it, feel it, experience it, exist with it in your 3D. If, when you feel lost, you focus upon love toward and spreading love outward. And holding to this love to be your guiding light through whatever you are experiencing. Or what you experience is part of the journey that will make you more ready and more able to consciously follow your bliss, to make your bliss part of your physical reality. And for some of you, to be able to reach that point, you first must have love for yourself. And project it outward to others and act from this space and react from this space. To allow yourself to be more open to that which you call your bliss. But know that as there is no time, you yourself must also endeavor to not place upon yourself an expectation of time for when you will achieve the manifestation of your bliss into your physical reality. In whatever form it may take, be it that which you can interact with, or be it simply an additional emotion that exists beside love. And as Alyssa has called it, the drive. Thanks, Randolph. Oh my gosh. Just gave me a thumbs up and said, "You're doing good." So, just pausing for a moment to double check that I'm not missing any questions. Okay. Alright. So, just to finish off this wonderful hour of exploring new ways of doing things, I wanted to finish off with just giving a little bit of a heads up about things that all of you guys will be seeing popping up both over in my group, The Amethyst Cave. You'll probably see it popping up here on my business page, A.R. Reynolds. You'll be seeing it popping up over on my YouTube channel, Alyssa Reynolds, as well. And that all has to do with the writing that I am refocusing upon, which actually also means it'll be continuing to show up over on my website, arreynolds.com, and also over on my Instagram, Alyssa Reynolds. Not Alyssa Reynolds, that's my other one. Alyssa Imaginist. I also have another Instagram, A.R. Reynolds, where I have quite a bit of poetry. At the moment, I'm kind of keeping my poetry on the hold because I've got a book of poems that I'm hoping to release as an ebook coming up in the next few months. But my main thing is that going forward, with all the channeling work that I do in these lives, and with the kind of monthly themes that I do for the Amethyst Cave group, as well as any of the pre-recorded things that I post up on YouTube, and all the different day-long or weekend-long classes that I hold as well. So the Fairy Realm and Elementals classes, the Divine Feminine classes, I may be doing a Mediumship class potentially coming up in a couple months. I've got a couple other types of classes in the works. But with all of that stuff, I'm also going to be bringing my love of storytelling back into everything that I do as well, because at the heart of what I've always loved about stories, why I love reading them, why I love engaging with them and pulling them apart and talking about them, and why I love writing them, is because stories have an amazing power to heal. They have an amazing power to help us grow. They have an amazing power to challenge us. And whether it is us just engaging with somebody else's story, or one of those collective stories like a myth or a legend or a folktale, or if it's by us engaging with our personal stories. So looking back through our own experiences in this lifetime and focusing on particular moments and really exploring how they influenced us as how we are today, or the multiple experiences we had and how they've all influenced us and who we are today. So all of that about stories is what I'm wanting to bring into other lives that I'm going to be starting to do, as well as videos that I'm going to be putting up on YouTube. I'm also going to be creating another community, probably over on a more open platform for people who aren't on Facebook, called patreon.com, which, coming up, if you've never ever heard of that, when I've got all of that stuff a little bit more settled and set up, I'll be live and talking about it. But I'm going to be having that be created, and along with all of the mediumship classes that I'm offering, I'm going to be starting to bring in classes about storytelling, about exploring our personal stories, and how all of you, even if you don't feel that you're creative or that you're a writer, you absolutely can tell one or all of your personal stories, and they all have the ability to not only help you to heal, but for other people to heal, and for other people to grow, and for other people to be challenged. That's the amazing thing about stories, is they bring communities together. They help communities to heal and to let go of things and to learn new things. So this is all just to say that you'll be seeing a lot more of my writing and storytelling interests and sides of things showing up across all my different social media platforms, in addition to everything else that I have already been doing, like those short stories that I've been posting every Sunday to my website. But there'll be lots more coming. And also, actually, in with the storytelling sides of things, since music is a huge love of mine as well, and music is another language through which stories are told. I haven't posted any of my channel compositions in some time. That's because I've been having a lot of fun just playing existing pieces on my lovely new acoustic piano Lucy. She'll probably feature in a video coming up finally, but I'll definitely be starting sharing a few more of those, and that'll be linking into a lot of the writing-based, storytelling-based lives and events and classes and just subjects and topics that will be coming into everything that I'm already doing. Alright, so thank you everyone for popping on over to my business page for a bit of a change in what my usual Saturday lives have. Yeah, I did say lives. Saturday lives, like living. Okay, sorry, I just had a flash of lives as in living through these lives come into my head. It has been quite a life this past year. And all thanks to all of you. So thank you for sharing this space as always. And I will see all of you for sure next Saturday back in the Amethyst Cave for a usual Saturday live. Don't know who's going to step forward next Saturday, but I'll be putting up an event for that when they do. And otherwise, since it is now moving into March, that does mean in our group that I'll be posting up every week a pre-recorded piece of channeled guidance around a particular topic. And March's topic is all about creativity and exploring your creativity. So again, all of you who have never necessarily put the word creative alongside your name, you're a creative being, you create things, you manifest things, and that's exactly what March is going to be exploring and inspiring. And I'm going to be connecting with 4 wonderful, wonderful individuals who were known and not so well known for their creative contributions to the human collective in the past. So that's Sappho, who was female ancient Greek poet and musician, and Hedjuana, who was a Sumerian priestess, and Maria Anna, or Nannerl, or Nannerl, Nannerl, Mozart, who was Wolfgang Amadeus's Mozart older sister, and she was also a composer. And also Friedrich Chopin, who was also a composer. So those are the 4 who I'll be tuning into and sharing their guidance and advice about being here in this 3D reality and creating and manifesting our desires, the things we're feeling, and so on and so forth. So I'm really, really excited about that. And yes! Oh, Kirsty, those are some wonderful, wonderful words to finish off with. Oh my gosh. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, everyone does have something to contribute. Just believing in yourself. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Kirsty. That's beautiful. So, on those wonderful words from Kirsty, I wish all of you a wonderful rest of your Saturday, wherever you may be, and I will see you again soon. So goodbye for now.